Welcome back to Scott Speed Triple Channel. I've had my new 2022 Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RS for about a year now. I've got just over 7,000 miles on it. Today's video is going to be a comprehensive review of the adjustments, issues, maintenance, and modifications I've made. And then I'll give you a little bit of history of my riding style and the types of riding I do on a daily basis before giving you my impressions and opinions of the bike. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get started. Early in March of 2021, I put a deposit on a black Triumph Speed Triple 1200 RS a few months before their delivery date. I had to put a deposit on the second black Speed Triple. Someone already had a deposit on the first. When that first one came in at Eurocycles of Daytona, the guy couldn't come up with the money, so they gave me a call and said, "Your bike is here, come pick it up." So on May 8th of 2021, I picked up my new bike. While they were doing the paperwork, I took a short test ride on the bike and immediately noticed that if you put any pressure on the shift lever, it will shift. It shifted into second gear as I was leaving the parking lot unintentionally. I was coming off of an 07 Speed Triple and never had a bike with a quick shifter before. Normally I put pressure on the shift lever before pulling the clutch to help smooth out the shifting, and that little bit of pressure was enough to shift the gear. I knew that was going to take some getting used to. The riding position, the seat felt comfortable enough, turned easily, screen was easy to read. It did feel a little bit stiff in the suspension department. Like all the reviews said, I figured hopefully I could sort that out. After the paperwork got done, I rode back to St. Augustine, where I live, from Daytona, about a 75-mile ride. I did have some more unintentional upshifts. I tried the cruise control once and had a bit of a time figuring out how to turn it off. I kept trying to turn it off with the switch gear and the toggle switch, and I knew I could disable it by hitting the brakes or pulling in the clutch, but I kept trying to figure out how to use the switch gear. But turns out you can't disable it with the switch gear. You have to either push the throttle fully forward or hit the brakes or pull in the clutch. I've gotten a lot more familiar with the cruise control now, and I found the smoothest way to turn it off is to accelerate some and tap your rear brake, and then there's no lurching. So the bike has a built-in brake-in mode that will show when you're over the recommended RPM. I did drive it very conservatively during the brake-in period. I didn't keep it at any set speeds. I varied the throttle a lot. I took short little rides, mostly maybe 20 minutes before stopping, sometimes possibly a half hour. Didn't keep it at any steady speeds more than maybe a few miles at a time. And I did exceed the recommended revs a few times, but not too badly. Had a few minor issues when I picked it up. First issue was the TPMS sensor. Was active on the bike, however I didn't want it, and it doesn't come with tire pressure monitors in the wheels anyway. That would be an aftermarket accessory to buy. So every time I started the bike, I'd have to clear a rear tire low warning light, then a front tire low warning light, then a rear tire pressure sensor no signal warning light, then a front tire pressure no signal warning light every time I started the bike. It was a little annoying, but they said there was a patch coming or a download coming from Triumph and that they could fix that probably within a couple of weeks. I did have that fixed at the first service. They got that cleared up for me. The second issue was that I didn't get a backup key fob with the bike. They said it wasn't in the packaging. So I had the main key fob and nothing else. They said they'd have to order it under warranty, and I didn't figure that'd be any problem. So the service manager said he was going to get that underway. The last issue I saw when I picked it up was the tank had some minor scuffing just above the seat, like a belt buckle may have scuffed it, some real minor scratches. I pointed it out, but I told him not to worry about it because I'd be putting tank protectors on it anyway. I always ride with a tank bag, and the tank protectors are just a must for me. They told me that because of the slight issues I was having, they were going to do my first service for free. Prior to picking up the bike, I'd already ordered the fly screen and windshield, which hadn't come in yet, and I wanted to order the scrolling turn signals when I picked it up. The parts department manager, Cindy, looked them up, and they weren't available. She called Triumph to see when they would be available, and we're told they're not going to be available in the USA. Triumph was petitioning to get them okayed, but at that point they weren't legal. I was a little disappointed, but hey, if you couldn't get them here, I couldn't get them. When I got home later that day, I tried the OEM Triumph rear stand for my '07 Speed Triple, and it didn't fit. The pin was too big. I went straight to Pitbull's website. It didn't have a listing for the new 1200 RS yet. I emailed Pitbull. I got a response from George. I think he owns Pitbull, saying he was waiting on measurements from his California dealerships, and he'd let me know as soon as one was available. I told him I could give him measurements. I had one in my garage, and he accepted and gave me a great deal, and literally 4 or 5 days later, I had a rear stand for the bike. More on that later. I'm going to do another video. I spent some time adjusting the suspension. I set the sag by eye and feel mostly, and then the damping, rebound and compression damping by just pressing down, watching the response. I weigh in at about 155 pounds, and you could probably add another 30 pounds for gear in my tank bag. It was set kind of stiff from the factory, and I ended up setting it probably about 20% of maximum on both the preload and the dampening settings. That suspension setting worked really good for my first few months of riding it. I do some commuting over concrete roads and bridges, and they're even a little bit rough when you're in a car. And I also go through some industrial areas with a lot of potholes and ruts from trailer trucks. Suspension soaked up all but the harshest of the road imperfections pretty good. I usually take my weight off the seat for the worst areas anyway. Even at that pretty soft setting, it was still a firm feeling ride. It's not soft, but I never expected a cushy ride from it. It's a very sporty machine. In October, at the Tail of the Dragon, I bumped the suspension up all the way around to about 25% of max. I've left it that way ever since. I made an adjustment to the shift lever after the first couple of rides. I brought it down a bit, closer to my toes. At the first service, right at about 600 miles, I got them to help me adjust the handlebars and levers. I moved them forward a little bit, maybe an inch and a half, and changed the levers to the natural angle for my grip. I like to feel my weight sitting forward on the bike. At the first service on June 10th, they did an oil and filter change. They retorqued and checked some of the main nuts and bolts. They did the update for the TPMS system and helped me adjust those handlebars. I asked about the backup key fob at that time, and the service manager said it was ordered. I had the fly screen by that time, but the windshield had not come in yet. Everybody at Eurosports liked my new license plate, which had come in a few days earlier. It's Florida plate SPD-TRPL. So I did some modifications. I've done a lot of modifications or upgrades. The first thing I did was I put some tank protectors on there. They're carbon fiber look. They kind of lined up with the front fender. Thought that looked pretty good. And I like the front fender. I've never been a real carbon fiber fan, but it was pretty cool looking. But then the more I looked at it, it's like, well, it needs more carbon fiber. So I decided I was going to try to get some more carbon fiber. But first, I decided I would put a bike cam on it, front and rear. So I bought a Blue Skies C BM1 front and rear bike cam. Has no monitor, but can be connected to your phone for live viewing or playback. I got the camera before the fly screen and windshield came in, so I waited for those before installing it. I ended up installing it on July 26th. Installed the camera, the fly screen, and the shield. I'm glad I waited because to get the wiring correct, I had to remove the fly screen anyway to run wires. I thought that might be the case. My commute takes me home down about a 5-mile stretch of very, very wooded roads, no access, and I've seen up to 12, 15 deer on that road on some evenings at midnight, 11 o'clock to midnight. And I hit one a couple years ago in a truck. It did a lot of damage. I upgraded all my truck lights to LEDs, and I decided I would put some extra driving lights on the bike to aid in seeing up the road to avoid hitting deer. The LED lighting that the bike comes with is fantastic. It's probably the best I've had on any of the motorcycles I've owned. Granted, I haven't had a new motorcycle in a while, but the lighting's pretty good, but can't hurt to add more. So I ordered some Denali D2 lights and the fork tube mounts from Denali, and they can be bought with a dimmer control. You have a plug that will cut the power, and then you have to buy a different switch, so you'll have 2 power settings. And they came in and I installed them on August 29th. I chose those because of the size. They're 2.2 inches circular wide, and they're only 2.4 inches deep. They're only 10 watts, but they make 2200 lumens. They come with 2 lenses. They come with either spot lenses or hybrid spot flood lenses, and all the lenses are approved for street use throughout the world. They're European specs, so they're easily US specs. They throw with both spots, which is what I put on to begin with, they throw a fair patch of light about the size of a car out about 500 to 800 feet in front of you, depending on how you adjust them. And that was good, but it didn't give much light to the sides. So I tried both hybrid lenses on them, and that throws a lot of light around you in the front, but it only reaches out maybe 100 or so feet. And I eventually settled on a spotlight on the left-hand fork tube and a floodlight hybrid flood spot on the right. So basically now they are kind of just like supercharging the lights. With the low beams on, I've got a pretty good patch of light right in front of me. It's really bright. And then I've got the one spot out a ways. It throws a good circle about maybe 400 or 500 feet out. And then with the high beam on, the extra spotlight out front and the high beams lights up the road really well. I'm happy I've got them. They really help a lot. I thought I might be like dimming them when I was in traffic and then put them on high when I got on the dark roads. And turns out I end up using them on high all the time at night. And I'll use them on dim if I'm in like foggy conditions or something to that effect. But that's a pretty good investment. On September 13th, I finally got the backup key fob. I'd been calling every couple of weeks and the service manager wouldn't answer and or return my calls. And so I'd try a couple of days, then I'd contact Cindy in parts and she would check for me. She's great. She's always been really good trying to get information for me. Every time she'd get in touch with the service manager, he would just say, "They're ordered. It's ordered." Finally, Cindy told me one day she wondered why it was taking so long because she could get blank backup key fobs within a couple of weeks. She could order them directly. So I asked the service manager if I could do that. He said, well, when we do it under warranty, it's got to come from Triumph and be pre-programmed, and then it just comes in and works. And I asked him, well, can you program a blank one? And he said, well, of course we can. So I asked him, would it be okay if I just ordered one under warranty and then you program it when it comes in, and he agreed. So 9/13, September 13th was when I got that done. Also on September 13th, I got home from the shop in Daytona, and I found my exhaust valve cover was rattling. It was loose. It didn't fall off. I took it off, and the bracket had broken. I called up the next day, and he said, "Oh, okay, we'll take care of that under warranty. I'll order the parts. I'll let you know when they're here." That went on for several months. More on that later as well. I'm going to do a video about the 2 fixes that I tried to do. He kept saying the parts were coming and they were back ordered or whatever. It took a while to get that straightened out. In early October, my friend Peyton and I took a trip to Robbinsville to ride the Tail of the Dragon in North Carolina and some of the other roads around there. And I noticed we got pretty bad weather, but I noticed the suspension felt not spongy, but I wanted to stiffen it up. So I did. I stiffened it up. So I'm probably now at about 25% of maximum on rebound, compression, dampening, and preload, front and rear. And that seems to be working pretty good. I haven't changed it since. I was pretty glad that I brought the backup key fob. I threw it in the glove box of the truck. We towed the bikes up. And because normally my bikes have all had keys, and if I towed them anywhere, I just leave the key in the ignition. Well, I didn't bring the key fob for the bike to North Carolina with me, so I had to use the backup key fob the entire time we were there. The more I looked at the bike, the more I thought it needed more carbon fiber. So I looked up a company in England, Carbon FBR, and I ordered several pieces of carbon fiber for it. It came in November. I also ordered an Evotech tail tidy and an Evotech exhaust hanger to remove the rear foot pegs. So in November I did an oil change. And I remember seeing some videos with people having issues about no oil pressure or low oil pressure after refilling the bike. I didn't have any of those issues. And that's when I also installed the Evotech tail tidy and the carbon fiber rear hugger and the catalytic converter cover and the exhaust heat shield cover and the radiator guards. That was the first time I had to remove the rear wheel, which necessitates removing the rear muffler and using a very special socket for the rear wheel, which turns out to be the same as some Ducatis. I ordered it off Amazon. And at that time, the bike was on stands, and I noticed the kickstand bracket was loose. So I tightened the kickstand bracket up, torqued it down, and remembered hearing about issues with engine covers seeping oil because they weren't torqued down properly at the factory. Sure enough, almost every single one of my engine cover bolts was loose. Maybe not loose to the point you could turn it with your fingers, but a lot of them, just the weight of a 8-inch ratchet on it would turn it by itself. So I torqued all those down, and I also checked my exhaust pipe bolts to the engine, and those nuts were tight. They were good. I didn't have any oil seepage, so I caught it in time. At that time, I also installed a set of bar end weights. I thought that might help with mirror vibration. At highway speeds, I have a bit of vibration. I can see in the daytime a car behind me, or I could probably tell if it's a truck or a car and what color it might be. But like with if you have to determine if it's just a white car with a roof rack or a police car would be virtually impossible. So I was hoping to kind of smooth out the mirrors by putting some bar end weights on there. That did not help. Coming up on Christmas, I decided I would probably order some more carbon fiber parts, including the tank infills and the frame infills. And at that time, I decided I would get an oil filter. An aftermarket air filter. And looked at K&N. They didn't have one available. There was another aftermarket one available, but it's pretty pricey. So I decided to hold off and just get a regular air filter. figuring I'd put it in when the tank and frame infills came in and I could change it at the same time. I figured at that time I'd also reroute some of the wires that I couldn't hide from the cameras and the lights. I got a nice surprise when I ordered the air filter. I asked about the turn signals, the scrolling turn signals, if they had become legal in the U.S. And Cindy looked them up, and sure enough, she could order them, so I ordered them right away. They came in January, and when I picked them up, I asked if they were plug and play or would I need some kind of computer change. She called Triumph to ask, and they asked her how she got those turn signals in the United States. She said, I ordered them, and they said, well, that was a glitch. They were not supposed to go to the U.S. She asked if she should return them, and they told her no. They said that if I get in any trouble, they'd refund my money. So, yay, I got a Christmas present from Triumph, and they were plug and play. Along with the tank and frame infills, I ordered the lower chain guard, the heat guards. I had ordered the chain guard in the first batch, the exhaust valve cover, and the front carrier wing, which goes just under the headlights. I also checked at that time about the parts for the exhaust valve cover, and the service manager told me they were back ordered, but they're on their way. He told me we'd have to replace the entire section of muffler. And I was like, well, okay, when it happens, it happens. Months and months kept going by, and again, when I would call that service manager, I'd never get a response. And I'd have to go through Cindy to contact him if I wasn't there personally. Early in April, I asked about the exhaust valve cover fix, and I had already tried some JB Weld. That didn't work. I had a bracket that a friend of mine cut a piece of metal. I bent it up and drilled it and put it in place, and it was working okay. But I contacted Triumph again, Eurocycles, and asked for the service manager, and lo and behold, the old service manager had been let go. They had a new service manager, and I asked him about it, and he said he'd only been there about a week, and he said he was just checking up on warranty issues. And so when he looked mine up, it had never even been placed. There was no warranty in place to fix that. And he said there is a recall. There's a factory OEM fix. He put that in place, and about 2 weeks later, he got the parts, sent them directly to my house for me, and I got that fixed. So that was on April 17th, and I spent the day adding carbon fiber parts to the bike, the rest of the carbon fiber, and I added some rubber washers between the bar end mirror and the bar end weights, thinking that might help with the mirror vibration. It didn't. I did another oil change at 7,085 miles. No problems with the oil change. At that time, I also pulled a lot of the silver bolts that hold the brackets and the covers and such on, and replaced them with black fairing bolts. I bought a fairing bolt kit, an OEM fairing bolt kit for sport bikes, and I replaced a lot of those bolts with black bolts. I've also put a Angels Speedo screen protector on it. It was relatively inexpensive. I ordered 4 of them, 2 clear. The package was 2 clear and 2 anti-ultraviolet or anti... The package had 2 clear and 2 anti-glare, and I tried an anti-glare. It dimmed down the instruments a bit during the day, and at night it was kind of dark, so I had to brighten up the instrument panel. I think if I do it again, I'll put the clear one on. Another issue I had with the bike was the rear brake. It would squeal occasionally. Not every time I pressed it, but generally on a regular basis. This is just kind of irritating. Didn't seem to affect the stopping power, but I did notice it seemed like sometimes the anti-locks kicked in when I really didn't think they should be. Again, that's something new to me. I've never owned a bike with anti-lock brakes. I've ridden several with traction control anti-lock brakes, but just didn't fit well with me that it was squeaking so often. So they did a recall to replace the bolts and the washers or the nuts that hold the rear disc on. So on May 18th, those came in, and I brought the bike down to Daytona to have the recall done. And lo and behold, as I pulled out of my driveway, the 1-year service engine service bike light came on. This service engine light is going to come on every year or every 10,000 miles, whichever comes first. They're giving an interval of 10,000 miles for an oil change, and that's too long. But anyway, the light came on, so in order to have it turned off, you have to go to a Triumph dealership, and they charge you a half-hour labor to clear it. So I got that done, too, the same day as I had the brake recall done. And the brakes didn't squeak on the way home. I haven't ridden the bike since, but the brakes did not squeak on the way home, not one bit, and that was pretty nice. So I'm still waiting on the tank and frame infills. And when I get those, you have to remove the battery, then the tank, and then the air box to put the frame infills in. And at that point, I'm going to try to rerun some of the wiring. I do have a few wires exposed on the right side of the bike. I want to tuck them all in so you can't see them. And I've ordered one more final modification. I've ordered an SC Project exhaust or a slip-on muffler, and I have not received that yet. That's going to be another video in itself. I'm going to try to do a good sound comparison. So the issues that gave me the most frustration was 3 months to get a key fob, a backup key fob, and 7 months to get a broken bracket fix. And I blame that solely on the service manager. Once the new service manager came in, everything got taken care of quick. The key fob would never have gotten taken care of if it hadn't been for Cindy giving me another option. And it was all covered under warranty. I didn't pay for it, but I sure had to wait a long time. Once again, I hold nothing against Eurocycles. They've been great. Every time I go there, they're always happy to see you. They did their best to accommodate me. I have an issue. My job runs Tuesday through Saturday. Their business is open Tuesday through Saturday, so I have to swap days out with people in order to get there, and they've always been real accommodating about it. I'll make an appointment a couple days in advance when they really don't have room, but they tell me if I can get there at the first thing in the morning, they'll take care of me, and they've always done that. I can't make an appointment too many weeks in advance due to the fact I don't know how the weather's going to be, and frankly, I don't have to ride in the rain anymore, so I don't very often. So we've come to the part where I tell you whether I like the bike or not. Well, yeah, I like the bike. I bought a Speed Triple brand new in 2007 when I was working at a Triumph dealership. I wanted a Ninja 1400 at the time, but I ended up buying the Speed Triple because they wouldn't give me any cuts on the prices, and I found that the Speed Triple is the most comfortable bike I've ever owned. It's got good power. It handles really well. There was nothing that I could say about the bike that was bad. And after that bike started to have a few issues, some missing, which I thought the worst case scenario, and started looking at parts and nothing's available, I decided I would, if that was the case, I started looking at some of the ads for the new 1200 RS, and if the case with the 07 was going to cost a lot or take a lot of effort to fix, I would go ahead and purchase a new one. And after finding out it was only a spark plug, I was a little disappointed. However, after a couple more weeks of thinking about it, I went ahead and bought the new one. And not any buyer's remorse, not a moment that I'm not happy about what I did. Handles fantastic. It's got great brakes. Got a lot of features that I've never had before, and I'm finding some of them are kind of useful. If you have to scratch your leg or your butt while you're riding, you can always throw the cruise control on and shimmy around a little bit. The power is just incredible compared to my 07 Speed Triple, and I've ridden some high power bikes, and this is just it's very comfortable. You could ride all day. I think I could put, I have in Robbinsville, I've put 200, 300, 400-mile day, I think. In the rain, it handles fine. It doesn't run away from you. It doesn't seem to slide out very often. I have noticed the anti-locks kick in occasionally when I really don't think they should be or they need to. But I run in sport mode 99% of the time. I'll put it into rain mode in heavy rains. I generally commute is what I've been riding mostly lately, and it's about a 45-minute commute. It's almost 50 miles, and the majority is highway miles, and that can get a little bit boring and drag. But then again, the bike's always fun to ride. I could go on about the vibrating mirrors or that it's tough to find neutral, and sometimes I still miss finding neutral. I'm getting much better at it. It's just a quick tap up, very light pressure, and it usually drops into neutral from at a stop for me. I very rarely put it into neutral from second, slowing down. So I'll come to a stop, and if I'm going to be at the light a long time and there's a car already behind me, I'll go ahead and put it in neutral. Once in a while it goes into second and I've got to click it back down, but from second down to neutral seems to go into it every time at a stop. I can't think of any negatives that would override the bike. It's a fantastic machine. I ride pretty conservatively. I like to get over in the corners when I can, but I usually don't go into them really fast or come out hard on the throttle. On my spirited type rides, I generally keep the revs anywhere from maybe 4,000 to 7,000 and peak it out a couple of times. I haven't topped it out yet. I've run it up a bit a couple of times. This suspension is not as harsh as what I think everybody was saying at first. I mean, you have to adjust it to your weight and a little bit to your riding style. I run my tire pressures at about 35, and like I said, my suspension, you might be able to see in some of the pictures, is probably about 25% of preload, front and rear, and probably about 25% of the maximum compression and rebound damping, both front and rear. It's not soft. It doesn't absorb the speed bumps, but then again, I take my weight off the seat on a regular basis. Not standing, but just kind of hovering my butt up off the seat so you don't slam it down into potholes or over speed bumps. It's very stable in corners. You can change your line without lots and lots of effort. I've had some bikes with cruiser type bikes with 19-inch front tires and rear 16s, and to turn them you kind of have to really pull on them. This bike will kind of lean in easily. It's probably a little less stable than my old Speed Triple. In the wind it moves me around a little, but if you're putting on the throttle and pointing it, it's going to go where it's pointed. Don't have too many issues with the brakes other than the squeak. The brakes are fantastic. It'll slow you down in a hurry if you need to. Normal braking is just effortless. Upshifting and downshifting with the quick shifter is pretty nice. It always works. I've not had any issues with mine. I feel sorry for those that have, but I have not. And sometimes the upshifts are absolutely silky smooth, and not always. And I think that's got to do with your road condition, your chain tension, your speed, your throttle. It's probably got a lot to do with a lot of things. But I've had a couple of false neutrals between first and second at real slow speed when I'm just trying to short shift up. But I believe that's probably because I didn't press the lever up solid enough. And I'm getting used to using the quick shifter down. I generally only use it when I'm coming to a slower portion of the road, or I'm in traffic and traffic is changing speeds on me in front of me. If I'm coming to a stop, or if I'm doing any kind of spirited riding going into a corner or something, I'm using the clutch just like a normal bike. But it's very, very, very nice. It's an interesting feature. So the power is phenomenal. It pulls really, really hard from anything pretty much over 5,000. And for the more normal riding that I do, I keep it probably about 5,000 to 6,000 highway speeds. And if I'm getting a little bit froggy and I want to step it up a little bit. I've pulled the trigger a couple of times, not maxed it out, but run it up to 8-10 grandish. I'm hoping I can find the video and post it here. One night coming home, I got on it pretty good. I was running about 75-80 high gear, and I got a little froggy, and I downshifted with the quick shifter twice to fourth, and I pulled the throttle, rolled it on really hard, and then pegged the throttle. And when I shifted into fifth gear, the front wheel just lifted. Immediately started coming up off the ground, and it just carried it for a little bit, dropped it down gently, and the moment it touched the ground, it did it again. Came back up and gently let it down, and one more time did the same thing. Dropped down, come up, dropped it down, and then I shifted into sixth gear and kind of started slowing down for my off-ramp, like skipping a rock off the water. It was really cool. I was only shifting at probably, I'm guessing, somewhere between 9 and 10. Maybe when I find the video, I'll be able to look a little closer, and maybe I'll be able to see. But I don't think I was real close to redline, but that was a pretty great feeling. So, quick review. I've done a lot of modifications. I've done some maintenance. I've got some more mods to do. Had a few issues, but they were nothing that made it a rideability issue. I bought this speed triple because I was very happy with my 07 speed triple. In fact, I had said that would be the last bike I owned. And after 14, 15 years with it and this new one coming out, I kind of fell in love with the new one. No buyer's remorse. Not looking back 1 second. I love it. I love the bike. I'm not a super hard knee dragging racetrack kind of guy anymore. Those days are gone. I don't wheelie it every time I get on the bike. I don't top it out every time I get on the bike. When I get sporty, I'll go into the corners where you have to brake or you crash, and I'll come out a little bit hard where I'll get the front end light sometimes. But for the most part, it's just it's more playful than hard edge. And the bike just suits me fine. It's got everything I need. Every time I turn the throttle hard, I think to myself, oh man, I don't know if I need this. But gotta admit, it's a thrilling bike, and I get some good comments on it. I'm comfortable with it. I could ride it all day. I plan on doing some trips here, doing some more videos. I'm going to start doing very short videos, I think, in the next few months. Anyway, thank you for listening. I would highly recommend this bike to anyone who is interested in a hyper naked, and hope to see you soon.